Welcome to the Dance Centre podcast. I am your host, Claire French, and I'm joining you from the traditional unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh peoples, also known as Vancouver, Canada. I'll be talking to dancers, choreographers and other members of the dance world here on the West Coast to find out more about their creative work and practices and to discuss what it means to us to be dance professionals today. Thanks for joining us. In this month's episode, I speak to Arno Kamolika. Arno is a bharatanatyam dance artist and instructor based in Vancouver. She was born in Bangladesh and has also trained in India and Canada. A graduate in architecture, she draws from her training of various disciplines like music, mime, theatre and other dance forms to add layers to her practice and to create an informed, artistic narrative. She's performed around the world in Canada, the USA, Germany, India and Bangladesh. Arno, welcome. It's so nice that you're here with me, and I do hope that I said your last name right, but would you please say your name, because I love the way you say it, and I would love for you to give a little bit of a, just as you were telling me, a little bit of a story into the pronunciation of your last name.
Of course. Thank you so much, Claire. It's so weird to, hear your bio back. When somebody reads it, it's a very weird feeling, but because you start questioning yourself, oh, am I all that? But yeah, let me start by saying my name. So it's a Bengali name. So both words of my first name and last name are Bengali. So my first name is Arno. I know it reads Arno like Arno, but in Bengali it's pronounced as Arno, which is very hard to pronounce, I know, even for Bengalis. And my last name is Kamolika, and I have a story for this name as well. My parents, as you might know, I am a great fan of Rabindranath Tagore, his poetry and literature, and so were my parents. Maybe I'm a fan because my parents were, and they took my last name from one of the character of Tagore's drama, Kamolika, and which means lotus. The word Kamolika means lotus, and Arno means water. So they wanted to keep a name that has a meaning in Bengali, which is like a lotus that blooms in the water.
That is such a lovely story. I can't help but think of a connection to Vancouver in that way, with the lotus and the water as well. Like these connections, which we'll get to later. Thank you for that. At the same time as you're just introducing that and your background, I'd like to talk more about your background a bit later and talk a little bit about what you're working on now for the Discover Dance, which I believe is October 28th. So even though we're talking and setting this up in September time, and this will be launched around the same time as your Discover Dance. So what's lovely is we get a little bit of more insight about where you are now leading up to it, almost like looking back to look forward. And it would be nice if you could talk a little bit about your process now. And I'd love to come back to the story that you told just a little bit later to tie in some of your history.
Actually, I think you have to probably come back, because the process that I'm going through right now has a connection with where I come from. So when Raquel at Dance Center asked me to perform for Discover Dance, which is I think I will be the first, my Discover Dance will be the opening one for this season. And I was wondering, of course, I'm a Bharatanatyam dancer, but so much of my work is influenced by me being a Bengali, me being fascinated by Bengali literature, Bengali poetry, me growing up as a Bengali in Bangladesh, where the only language we spoke was Bengali all the time. And music, Bengali music, Tagore's poetry. So, and I have worked and experimented with Bengali poetry here and there, but I have hardly tried to, bring it forward for the dance community. My Bengali work always have been for the Bengali communities in Vancouver, where I have performed. And there was always there was a division, even in my work, which was also like, because, when we think of Bharatanatyam, we have a little bit of idea or maybe a template that we think that, oh, Bharatanatyam looks like this. But for me, Bharatanatyam has always been an expression or a tool to express what I'm feeling or what the story that I want to say. And the story that I would like to say has to be Bengali because that's what I mostly connect to. So right now, I'm actually in a transition, even as an artist, as a person, to find that connection between, having Bharatanatyam as my dance style and having Bengali as the language that is mine and where I belong. And how do I bring these two together? And this Discover Dance, I thought, okay, wherever I am in that process, why don't I just showcase that to the audience? Because hopefully we will be able to do it with a live audience. And if I can bring the musicians that I have worked with for last, 2, 3 years, who has helped me to create some kind of vocabulary that I was looking for, maybe if I can bring them and introduce some of the works and some of the collaborations that we have done in past few years to the audience, that will be like an exciting journey for all of us because it will also give me an idea how far I have come in that, journey of mine to find myself.
Exactly, and I think there's what's so lovely about hearing you say that is in my research of you and reading articles that have previously been written and your blog spot on the Dance Centre website and Creator Star has an article on you, the Chan Centre, the Dance Centre, Nova Dance. You're on Nova Dance as well. Like there's a whole bunch of, and I found something on the Sauce or La Sauce.
Mm-hmm.
LA Sauce, La Sauce. So you can find out lots of information from Arno in all these places. But what I was very excited about was learning about the dance styles and how Bharatanatyam is not an immediate connection for you to your Bengali and Bangladeshi background because it's really, is it, now am I saying this right? Probably not, but is it Manipuri or Manpuri and Kathak? Are they more
Mm-hmm.
likely to be the forms that are in from your childhood? So Bharatanatyam was
Yeah.
already a step away. There's already a
Mm.
collaboration, if you like, or a cross-disciplinary connection between Bharatanatyam and Tagore in your background. That's already a step
Yeah.
outside of a culture. Could you
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, oh
Mm.
my God, I can go forever because I'm also, at when you're young, you don't think about these things when you're learning the
No.
forms, right? You just go
Mm.
ahead and start learning and you want to just be like your teacher. I think that's how we all become dancers. We just get fascinated by our instructor, our gurus, our teacher, and we just want to be like them because they are just so wonderful. And for me, see, Bangladesh as a country, because it's so close to West Bengal of India, and Manipuri was a more dominant dance form there. And Bharatanatyam, for example, my teacher from whom I started learning the basics of Bharatanatyam, he was actually the first Bharatanatyam dancer in Bangladesh who actually went to India and learned Bharatanatyam and came back and started teaching that to Bangladeshi students. And I was one of his very, first students. So when I was looking around, I really did not have a reference what Bharatanatyam was. I just liked the form and probably I was good at it. I'm not sure, but my teacher also liked me. And he said that, yes, you should definitely continue it. And then he managed to bring his teacher, who is this legendary teacher, legendary guru of India. Like everybody actually, he's one of those, very first masters of, and somehow, and see, he was a Hindu Brahmin, and my teacher from Bangladesh was a Muslim teacher who was a very religious Muslim person, but he could easily glide into being a Bharatanatyam dancer and worshipping the Hindu gods and goddesses. And somehow, for me, it didn't seem like an alien form because I could relate to the teacher that was teaching me. He was just another person, another Bangladeshi person like me. And then I saw the relationship with him and his guru, who eventually came to Bangladesh and taught us more advanced, gave us more advanced class. And I fell in love with that being, that guru, because he was so knowledgeable. I think everybody falls in love with him when they see him, Chandrasekhar Guruji. He had so much knowledge of music, rhythm, dance, theater, and he was also a botanist. Like, he had studied botany, so he was always into looking at nature and finding inspiration, although he was a dance master. And that image made me realize that, oh my god, this is if I want to be something in life, I want to be a person like this. It was not only the dance and not only the form, and he made it so easy for us, although it was a different language, although it was a different culture that the dance was coming from. As you know, that even in South Asia, every part of India or every part of South Asia has different language, different culture. So it's not like now it's very clear because of the YouTube and everything, we all know each other. But imagine in the 90s, it was a very different culture for me to go to Chennai and not knowing the language, not knowing the culture, but he made the dance form above everything. And the connection and the kind of, the kind of love he was spreading.
Yeah, it's like it can only come from an holistic, integrated kind of sense of being. When you meet somebody who understands how all of these components fit for them, then that's how you can respond, right? As a whole
Yeah,
person. To Yeah,
exactly.
that's lovely. There's so much I would like to talk about around that, but I just feel like I should jump on something you said about this person also being a botanist. And how you are also an architect. And your connection to that, and this will also give us opportunity to go a little bit back to your bio, because as happens in bios, it tends to sometimes read a little bit like a list and we feel a
I
little bit like,
know.
ah. And this is opportunity as well to, I think, dig into maybe how these various disciplines might inform you, how they're weighted
Hmm.
perhaps in your work, whether you privilege some over the other. But I'm just genuinely intrigued in whether you still are a practicing architect, whether how are these things with you now, even if it's just an interest that you think feeds your work, or if there's something that are actually is part of your profession or part of how you live daily, or where would you say all of these disciplines fit?
Oh my God, this is like being honest, time to be honest. So see, I probably, if I had written that bio like today, maybe I would have skipped that part, because I feel like I'm a graduate of architecture, and I did practice for around 2 years when I was in Bangladesh before moving to Vancouver. But after moving to Vancouver, I have not practiced architecture because life and lots of other things, privileges, situations made me choose, I would say, like when I had this choice of doing dance or suffering more to become an architect, I chose being a dancer because it was just because. And also, I know there are people who can do them together, like they can balance their life. But I feel like, me being also very passionate about architecture, I felt like I can't do both. Like when I was studying architecture, you won't believe it, but for those 5 years, I did not perform. I did not do dance. I was just, staying in touch with the school of dance that I have learned from, but the architecture was consuming me so much. And then after graduating and after moving to Canada for my master's, when I found Jay Govinda and started to, dance again, actually, and perform again, because he was such an supportive teacher again. Like, I'm so lucky in that sense. The teachers and the gurus I've got, I don't know what they have seen in me, because I have never seen that in myself. it was only them that saw potential, and then that pushed me to go forward. I'm kind of like a very doubtful person and insecure in general. Like I never think that I'm good at anything. And then and also Canada being, I would say, such a free place for me, like I was a new person here. It didn't matter in Canada for anybody if I was a Bengali or a South Asian, if Bharatanatyam, like, if I am born in the country that where Bharatanatyam comes from, for example, India, like it didn't matter to anybody because there were so less, probably in a way, that there were not many Bharatanatyam dancers in the city when I was coming in. So, and I had a lot to offer because of my experience, like 25 years of dancing experience from Bangladesh. I thought like I had so much to give in the dance, where in architecture I was just starting. So I automatically I got drawn to dance, and I thought, okay, I'm choosing it consciously. I don't want to compromise. But saying that, architecture, I think that I could, everything is in a way a battle, and the kind of multitasking or the kind of work that I do now, the kind of, I always try to find connection between different things. Even when I'm doing a traditional dance form, I always try to find another a different kind of concept or different kind of expression through it. I think that came from my training in architecture, because it was, in architecture we always had to, we didn't sleep at night, like as architecture students. It was such a difficult 5 years of studies, and it was all about creating something new, designing something new, and pushing yourself. And I think that has really made me a stronger manager and director, for which I actually managed to pull off some really difficult shows and projects in, past 5 years. Otherwise, I don't know.
Yeah, so I love that because I think there's something around also in the training of it, form and function,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
purpose. So you are, at the same time that you are creating something, you are having to assess or evaluate its function and therefore its purpose. And so concepts are tied to, they're tied to intention in a very different way,
exactly.
but they also have to perform. These structures and these ideas they have some kind of
Yeah.
performative, and situational component, right? They are place, they are context.
True.
And I can see how all of those things, and thinking of all of those things and understanding how all of those pieces have to fit together, could be extremely valuable for understanding not just product, but the connection between process and product, and then
Yeah.
the connection between how you might want an audience or your clients or customer, or which we don't use in
Yeah.
the arts, but there's a kind of, there's a crossover there. I also just, there's something around when you said about being doubtful, um and to come back to that idea of being in the room, I think there's something sometimes about a sensitivity that
Mhm.
comes with that, that means that your vulnerability, or the way in which you're coping with your sense of vulnerability as a learner
Mm.
and as a student also is a gift for a performer,
Yeah.
because I think that is constantly connecting. Like there's a self-reflection that happens, and a kind of, need for validation or
Yeah.
something from a teacher, which is also in the audience, and then is also how you share your sense of self,
But
in
Claire,
the room.
yeah, but I was actually talking to somebody about it a few days ago. Like, why I actually, like, I don't think I chose dance, dance chose me. But why did dance chose me? Like, both my parents, my mother was into music, but nobody was aware of dancing. So it was just by chance that I went into a dance school, and because the music class was full. So my mother actually took me to, admit to a music class, and it was full. So the dance class was empty, and I'm like, okay, let's go in there. And it was just by chance. But I think the reason, because I'm doubtful, the best thing about dance is not in this COVID situation, but you don't see yourself. You don't hear yourself. You don't see your designs. You don't read your writings. You are doing whatever you want. Of course, not whatever you want, but of course, there's a method to it. But then it's for others to decide they like it or not. And it, as a dancer, we don't probably sometimes even don't think about that, if they are liking it or not. We are just happy while being on stage or while being in that movement. And that's why now with this digital performance, it's getting so hard for me, because then you get to see yourself and then all those doubts starts coming in. But until now, I never had that. Dance was the only place for me where I could let go of those doubts, because I could leave it up to the eye that is watching me. If they like it, good. If they don't like it, but as long as I'm enjoying and I'm not seeing myself, which is the best thing. And it's so funny that and maybe that's why, because in when you're into, like, visual arts or even into music, you're constantly hearing yourself and you're constantly, nitpicking. If you're drawing a line with a pencil, you are always like, I could have never been a painter because I'm always doubting that line that I'm drawing. But I could be a dancer because I'm somehow not doubting the way I'm moving my hand. It somehow has
Mm-hmm.
worked for me.
Yeah, although it makes me think I would love to see your painting.
No, not at all.
But that's the choreographer in me, which isn't really fair to say in
Yeah.
this middle of all of this. But it does make me think that,
Mhm.
like, because there is something about that expression and the freedom you find in the expression when it's your whole body and you're giving.
Yeah.
You're actually giving,
Yeah.
um, and you're not judging in that process. You're doing one thing and you're giving,
Exactly.
and you're allowing the audience to choose how to engage,
Yeah.
in that. I love that. Does that apply also to your collaborators? Because I'm interested in how you're finding collaborating these days, to bring it to the COVID times and also to bring it back to Discover Dance a little bit, because just to make sure I don't forget to say this, but not only are you the first Discover Dance for this season, but it's also the 20th anniversary of Scotiabank Dance
Yeah.
Centre.
Yeah.
And so it's a very special time to think about two things: the fact that, we are having audiences again, but also the building has been there for 20 years. And you and I have both, made a lot, much use of the building over those times. And might be a nice time to talk about how our collaborations are happening these days because of the COVID time, and also what impact the building has on us and our practice, especially right now. So,
I will probably start with the building because, see,
yeah.
I think the reason I came back to dance after moving to Canada, because just imagine, like, a girl comes to study, architecture, and then she's not even thinking of taking dance professionally. And then she, emails this one school, and then she comes into this building, and then she's getting, like, it was such a beautiful moment for me. I still remember it in 2000, was it 9 September or 2010 September? I'm just getting into the building, and then I'm watching ballet BC rehearsing on the other side, and then there is classes of mandala arts in the same floor. And I'm like, wow, like bharatanatyam didn't feel less visible dance for me. As an immigrant, just imagine where I'm from, and coming, not all, even like a student, international student back then. So I was like, oh my God, if there is a building for dance in a city, that's enough for me, because where do you get that, right? So Dance Center, the building, has been so instrumental for a person who is doubtful about everything like me, because it told me that, you know, this dance will stay here and you can come whenever you want to practice, and this building is yours as long as you become a member, you get all these facilities. And I was like, wow, where do dancers get that? I have never got that. I have always had to depend on somebody to get those facilities and privileges. And then in the pandemic, it was again like, when we all were like scared and what's happening. And then I had this dance lab, which I applied before the pandemic started. So by the time I had to start working on it, the pandemic has already started. And I was like, what am I going to do? But Dance Center was there. Like, I just had to modify my application. I had just had to modify my project. And I was going every week, dancing on my own, wearing my mask, wearing my socks. That was the only change I had to make during the pandemic. And I had this huge, like, Jaroslawski or Birmingham studio to myself. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like people won't even like, my Bangladeshi coworkers or dancers or my friends won't even believe that what kind of, how helpful actually an organization can be for an individual artist's, development. It's just
Yeah, I think
amazing.
that's so wonderful to hear, because we think all the time of, the large scale productions, the production, and we think of classes being full, of like 30, 60 people in them, and all of the as a hub for lots of people to be there together.
Yeah,
But what we all found during COVID, and I was working, for the dance center full time during COVID, was this like support that we could give to each other as individuals
yeah,
when necessary, and how having that kind of institutional support or organizational support that had to also adapt in order to be able to do that, for was just a kind of was a way to build a sense of community, even though we're very aware that we have lots of different communities. But I think that was really interesting. So individuals could benefit, and at that time, that's what was necessary. Individuals needed to feel they had places,
exactly.
or they could continue, or also was what happened with a lot of people was could reevaluate,
Yeah.
and so people could shift their work and shift in and out of
It
working,
it has
which is
happened to me.
fascinating
Like
to me. Mm.
I'm not the same dancer as I was 2 years ago because of this support that I got. And I'm coming back to the second part of your question, which is the collaboration you were talking about. See, because I could keep my practice on and I could still go on with my project, even as a solo artist for the whole pandemic, when these opportunities started coming to me, when people started, gathering themselves, and for example, the Chance Center performance, when it was like a very short project because you can't plan for a year-long project in this situation. But I was I was so confident that I'll be able to make it work because I was going into the studio all the time and dancing and and then I just brought that to the musicians and we just collaborated. We did that with 7 rehearsals. Can you imagine, Claire? That huge show, because I was just confident that we can make it because we can't afford to have more than 7 rehearsals in the pandemic. And it just happened. And that, the collaborations are so wonderful because that made us such good friends, with musicians, dancers, all of us, that we want to work more, like maybe not such a huge project, but maybe something like Discover Dance. And when I reached out to those artists, for example, Curtis, I call him, and Sharanjit is the sitarist. And when I asked him that, would you like to, do this small project with me for this? And they were like, yes, we are looking, we want to work. We doesn't matter what the situation is. Music should happen, dance should happen. And I think it's only because of the pandemic that everybody started thinking in that way, that collaborations, like I'm collaborating with Sujit. See, for past 10 years, we always have seen each other. We have been friends, but never this thought has come to our mind that maybe we can collaborate. But pandemic made us, cherish each moment that we can get.
I love that, because I'm also working with and collaborating with Sujit,
Yeah,
and he's coming to our project for Restless Productions, and it's a similar thing. We're dance and music as well, and looking at kind of sharing of practices and how that melding comes together. But so that's really lovely to hear, and I think it seems to me that there are a lot of people who are busier than ever,
I know, which is,
creating way more.
yeah, that it has its cons.
It does, but at the same time, but I think it's scale. I think we all have this interest in working because we've had to find quite intimate ways of working and also isolated ways
Yeah,
of working.
yeah,
Those two, I think it's just widened or expanded the spectrum on which we understand that we can collaborate. Or
yeah,
do
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like we don't have to be in a room
Yeah,
together. Yeah.
Claire, also it made us forgiving. Also, it made us compassionate.
Hmm.
Also, it made us caring towards each other. Like, it's not about competition anymore, or it's not about like finishing a production anymore. I end up saying all the time now that, you know, like, what more do we have to lose, or what more do we have to gain? Let's just enjoy the moments, and we will show however whatever we have so far, because it's not end of our life, and but it also can be the last show. So why are we, you know?
Well, I love that because I think the competition you talk about is actually a byproduct of the pressure we feel to produce
Productivity,
something.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the productivity and the race to finish something, or the need to feel like we have, that's how we show that we're working, or how we show that
exactly.
we are professional or something. When
Yeah,
now there's much more room, everybody is realizing that the pacing, we have all these other ways to pace our work and be with our creative work. I think that's really exciting. And like you say, I think that compassion is extended outside of our immediate collaborative groups,
yeah,
and there's more room to think that other people are making work differently.
true. And I should thank Nova Dance also, because throughout the I was doing an internship that I was supposed to go to Toronto. I received a BC Arts grants for that. I was supposed
Hmm.
to go to Toronto for this our project Swaha that was supposed to happen in 2020, and then the
Is that the choir?
it's like a body choir of 70
Yeah.
people, and that was the plan, right? We were all working to, like, three dancers from Vancouver were involved in it, me, Kirutika, Malvika, and then there were other
Mm-hmm.
dancers from Toronto. And
Toronto, yeah.
then the pandemic happened, so the show got
Mm-hmm.
postponed to we don't know when. And
Mm-hmm.
but I had this internship planned, so Novadi was like, okay, let's start doing something over like online. And I ended up doing like 300 hours of work during the whole pandemic. But
Nice.
what struck me, and also how Nova Dance was also exploring itself throughout the pandemic, is how to find care and compassion. And that is like a motto of them now, like when they are going towards, like, maybe making that production a reality. But I can see how the whole vision and everything has changed for them. Like, it's not about, just showcasing the dance anymore. It's more about, going more deeper and finding what is really important for these dancers, and how all these women, because it's a woman cast, so all these women actually end up supporting each other. And I feel like that's going to be a wonderful production in whichever way it ends up, being produced, because the inner truth is so beautiful there. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just, yeah, I'm lucky that I was part of that
Yeah.
transition.
That's really wonderful. And just for listeners, novadance.ca, there's a tiny clip of, I think that some of the ideas in that I don't think you're in because they're in a theater space, but your bio is there. A longer bio is there on the website, but it's a really wonderful, like just what we were talking about just now. I think they really do embody it. And I think you can see it in that clip on the trailer that's on the novadance.ca website. So it's worth checking out. I was also taken by the contemporary quality of those videos. And I just wonder, maybe we could talk about that a little bit, as maybe the final thing we talk about, although I feel like I could talk with you for hours. And so I'm sure there'll be more.
Yeah.
But I think it might be a nice way to end, actually, just on this idea of, in some ways, cycling back to what you said about Discover Dance and how
Mm-hmm.
you want to bring it to a wider dance audience than just South Asian, if you like,
Mm-hmm.
or and not just about crossing over within South Asian styles, but also this idea of contemporary and how the work is contemporary and what makes it contemporary
Mm.
beyond it being you as a person living today, working with these traditional forms. And you're also drawing on historical context within the Bangladeshi literature and poetry. But also, I know that there's a huge contemporary contingent. So, could you just, well, one thing to lead us into that, maybe I'll just reflect upon your own words from another article. I think it's from the Creator Star article, maybe from the
Mm-hmm.
source. Two quotes that I'd like to us to draw on, and maybe you could tie these into the discussion about
Mm-hmm.
contemporary. I hope it helps.
Yeah,
If it's
let
a
me see what
sidetrack,
I
you
have
can ignore
said.
anything. Okay, this is what you said. You were quoted as saying, "Ideas only take shape when you welcome others into the space, and they react to what you are doing and saying, and that's how I work." And that was in March 2021.
Yeah.
And the other thing you said was the personal is the universal and the universal is the personal. So for me, those two ideas speak very much to this idea of they could define collaboration, they could define like how we connect as a society in, you know, in our contemporary society, or how we're searching for that, or what art can do. And then there's your specific way of going about those things. So if that helps.
No, oh my God. I can't believe I said nice, such a nice sentence. I could formulate that
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not very good at formulating sentences, but I
But you're good in flow.
thank you, Claire. Yeah, that's a good affirmation for me. Thank you so much. It will help me in the next interview. So,
Great.
I truly believe I as a single person, or I was just one person, or one person left in this world without any life, without any nature, or without anything to be inspired from, I couldn't have been an artist. Like everything I do, or every kind of work I do, I get inspired from, maybe even kids, the students I teach. Like they teach me, or they give me ideas every class that, oh my God, how did she do that? How could I have never thought about that like that. And my partner, he can't stop singing because he's a musician. He always like keeps singing in the house. And every day, I know as much as I get irritated by it, but I also get ideas because I'm not a musician. And I'm like, oh my God, why did he sing this part like this? And how can I show it in my dance? The kind of emotion that he brought in that line of music. And that's how, so I don't actually know. I have thought a lot about this word contemporary in my life, even when I was studying architecture. Right now, I think like what I have decided, or at least right now, what I'm thinking is I really don't want to go into any kind of labels at this point because I think it gets really complicated. Like if you start talking about what is contemporary, what is not, what is traditional, and I think that's a huge topic, and I feel like I need a little more knowledge to talk about those things. But for me, the work has to be yours. Even if you're doing a traditional piece, even if you're doing a perfectly like bharatanatyam that we like probably 10 of us have learned the same thing, but when you will be doing it, you will be approaching it from a very different perspective because your upbringing, your training, your education is different. You came from like the same thing. And the best thing about Nova dance and the contemporariness that they showcase is that everybody has space there. Like I was not into contemporary. I love watching contemporary dances. I have learned contemporary like Uday Shankar style of dance, which is like a very Bengali contemporary, you should say. But I have been very satisfied being a Bharatanatyam dancer. I never thought that I need to be a contemporary dancer to make my dance feel contemporary. You know what I mean? So, but in Nova Dance, when I went there, and I think a lot of us, we are all very much trained in traditional Bharatanatyam or Manipuri or other like Kathak, Odissi, all these dance forms. But the way and you see, we all are different there. Like Nova Dance is not trying to create a homogeneous body. And I think that's what contemporary about it, like even with same kind of training, everybody has something very different to offer. And that can come from literature. Like for me, it comes from literature and music because I'm a very music kind of person. I think with music. I don't think from the lyrics, I think from the rhythm. I think from the beat. I think from the melody. And that's why anything I do becomes influenced by that, even if it's a very traditional. Some people doesn't think that way. Some people think it from maybe, whatever they are feeling at that moment, or whatever identity they are trying to bring forward of them. So that's contemporary too, right? So now it's a hard question for me. That's what I want to say, that I don't want to give a simplistic answer because I don't think the answer is very simple and it should not be.
I totally agree. And I think, it warrants discussion. It warrants, difference of opinion. And I think that's the one thing that contemporariness should be, is a celebration of
Yeah,
difference,
yeah,
and a celebration not of difference across different companies or different people, but a celebration of multiplicity and of even multiple thoughts, or even contradictory thoughts in one
exactly,
person potentially. Like I
exactly.
think I think we're in a very, complex and heterogeneous, society, and I think that's where its strength is.
Yeah,
um, but I also think there's something about, and within that, there's a kind of alternative virtuosity that can come from it, which is how people and individuals relate their
mm,
experience and their histories to their current expression and sense of being in society,
yeah,
being in
yeah,
whether you're living in a city or you're in a rural community, or your values around self-expression, your values around collaboration, can come out in the form and in the work you choose to create,
yeah,
and also continue to spread that message out to an audience so that they are also expanding their horizons as they watch contemporary. So I totally agree. I think the idea that you come to watch a contemporary thing, and because you don't receive what you thought was contemporary,
uh,
I think that's a bonus. I think
yeah,
that's a plus.
yeah,
I think then contemporary is doing its work. But if you arrive and you get everything that you expected a contemporary dance thing to be, then that's the norm that you are measuring work by,
yeah,
and it's categorized. And I think we all could do with just blowing that, just letting the
yeah,
fireworks go off a little bit,
yeah,
to see where we're the norm, and where we are actually, like you say, investing in it
yeah.
with a little bit of personal risk
Yes,
to
yes,
kind of,
yes.
yeah.
And I hope to
I think that's,
change also, Claire. I hope that in five
yeah,
years
nice. Yeah.
if we are having the same conversation, I hope that I have something else to say to you. I hope that my views I gain more wisdom around this,
Yeah.
and I get influenced by people. I get inspired by other kind of either political discourse or anything, and then I probably have something else to tell you, that because I
Yeah.
think in 5 years contemporary should mean something else to me, and that's how it
Yes.
will continue being the contemporary you
Oh,
know
I love that. And I think also there's space. I think you and I are like sponges, and we want, but then there's also that moment where we have to let that wisdom, if you like,
Mm,
become embodied. And that's a process in and of itself
yeah,
that you can't even rush, or actually you can't predetermine how that's going to become embodied, how that wisdom is going to become embodied.
yeah.
And so I'd love to talk to you next week, but also I would love to talk to you in 5 years' time.
Yeah.
I think maybe we'll just hum to each other, or
Yeah, no, it was
or share
it
rhythm.
has been
Yeah.
such a, it's nice that we got here. Like, the conversation went here. I was not expecting it, but it feels
No,
it feels
I wasn't
amazing.
sure. Good. Well, we'll keep going. We'll keep, and of course, the next stage for us, of course, is to see your next iteration of work,
Hmm.
and I'm very excited that you're getting to collaborate with the same people again across
Yeah.
different projects. But I will just share. You can look up now. I'm going to ask you to say your name, and then I'm going to repeat it. But would you say your name? Because
My
I think
name
everybody
is,
should try to
of
say your
course,
name.
of course. If everybody can, my parents will be
We
very
won't even
happy. My parents.
we won't even hear them try, but it might be a
So
nice little
why
thing
don't we
people can
just
do.
today try with my first name? let's
Yes.
take one step at a time. So Arno.
Okay. Ordno.
Arno. Yeah, that's
Ordno.
lovely.
Ordno. I'm not getting the R, but Ordno.
Arno. Yeah.
And then I want to say Kamolika, but is that
Yeah,
right? Ordno. No,
Kamolika.
no, it's not. No, it's not right, listeners.
But it's just about the K. See, in Bengali language,
Mm.
you have ka, kha,
Oh,
then ga,
right.
kha. So there's so many
Mm.
and we are taught that at when you're 3 years old. So how can
Yeah.
how can you get that now? So you have to start from that letter, ka, kha, ka, kha. Only then you can say Kamulika. So I also understand. I can't start speaking French right now.
No.
How can I?
Pourquoi pas?
So you just have to be I think as long as somebody is trying, I think that's the main thing, right? Because
well, I love it because it's new information, right? Even a name and how to pronounce a name is new information.
Yes.
It's just, it's all very, very exciting. Well, this was an absolute pleasure, and I'm very excited to see your work next. And I'm sure there'll be more articles and more people will be writing about you as that happens. And I know we will talk again. So yeah, I just want to thank you so much.
Thank you, Claire. It has been an absolute delight, to talk to you. I was as usual nervous because I'm not a good speaker, but I had such a fun time. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, so did I. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. We would love for you to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts, as this will help other listeners find us and help us to grow our dance audience. We'll be back next month. In the meantime, you can follow us on Facebook at The Dance Centre, Twitter at Dance Centre, and Instagram at The Dance Centre BC. And if you'd like to support our work, please consider making a donation. Just go to our website at thedancecentre.ca, where you'll find extensive information about our upcoming programs and events. The music for the Dance Centre podcast was composed by James B. Maxwell. Always a pleasure to connect with you through dance. Until next time.